There were a myriad of feelings and emotions flowing through my body. After the whole experience I've been through, things have been pretty quiet. I ingested those miraculous pills, and my life had been changed forever. Plunging deep down into eternal new worlds and experiences, the fear I felt was almost glued to my soul. My family was safe in a way, even though they weren't here with me. Every time I looked at the sky, I could imagine their faces in the clouds above, smiling, watching over me. At least, that journey provided me with closure, and it erased things I didn't want in me anymore. I remember the night was silent, dead silent. I woke up to the sound of something crashing in the wall of my bedroom. The whole house moved from the shock. I got scared because I thought there was an earthquake going on, although the area I lived in never had one of those in its recorded history. I got out of bed to see Somber crouched in the corner. He was coughing and he looked hurt. He spat a thick, dark liquid that resembled hot tar. I imagined that was his blood. Sorry to come in unannounced like that. One of those angels is after me. It broke the laws and stepped into the bad half of heaven. He's hungry, vicious, and out for blood, Somber said. I watched in horror as his new heart seemed to malfunction. Or was it broken? Maybe it wasn't meant for him to have it. I wanted to have this again, but it seems impossible right now, he said while touching the surface of his chest, right over the heart. He reached inside, the squishing sound of tearing flesh flooding my whole being with an all too familiar feeling of horror and dread. The bolts of lightning that illuminated his body simply turned off. He then looked just as he did when I first saw him, a sad, gloomy shadow made of smoke and darkness. I watched as he started eating his heart. Blood gushed on the floor, staining it in patterns that resemble Rorschach tests. As he was ravenously biting and chewing, I noticed the heart was turning to coal. It withered away. Before Somber finished his feast, the heart showed tiny red cracks with strange lights shining through. It looked like it was about to burst, to explode. A divine bomb. A bright flash filled the room and I heard Somber scream until there was nothing but silence left. I squeezed my eyes shut, otherwise, I'd have gone completely blind. It was like staring into the sun for far too long. I felt Somber's hand grabbing mine and then I was floating. I didn't know if this place was the one I've been to before. I felt so calm, worry-free. I couldn't open my eyes, no, even for a single second. I remember landing on the hard, cold ground. Freezing wind swept through this new, unfamiliar place I found myself in. I opened my eyes and the horror unfolded before me. Statues of impossible creatures were decorating the wastelands. Their faces were contorted in fear. Some had wings, others were missing them. Or maybe they'd have been ripped off from their bodies. There's no time for that. It's coming, Somber said. The pain and fear in his voice was immense. I felt the same way. The sky was gloomy, desperate, and most of all it reeked of death. The sun was just a black ball of tar hanging dull in the sickening canvas above. It dripped infinitely in the sickly sky. The droplets were carried away by the wind in a circular motion. There was a huge hollow tunnel that was crossing the sky, small dots of light shining through from time to time. Giant frost icicles crashed on the ground. The sound they made was something that pierced my ears like a desperate scream of pain. Horror filled my soul as one of those landed right behind me. Turning around, I saw a creature that wanted to reach me through the ice. Its screams of frost were silenced immediately. The creature turned into a sculpture, into one of those statues. The scream remained trapped in time, forever. This place was a home for the forgotten. a place of unrest for those torn apart, the graveyard of the discarded. Black snow started coming down from the sky. Everything was in reverse here. It was not even sad, this place. It was desperate, desolate, left to rot in the maddening decay of time. It was forgotten by its creator. It was pushed aside, like a side project that failed, like a toy that he'd gotten bored with. This is the place? The bad half of heaven? I asked. Yes, it is. My home. This is where they sent me after I wasn't good enough for them, Somber said, sighing. This is the place for the discarded angels. The ones that were born with flaws and imperfections. The ones that failed. I am one of them. He continued and told me that their creators cast them out. There were more creators. More gods. I was petrified. I looked at those stone statues again. Seeing their faces contorted with such an immense fear was mind-shattering. It made me ask myself what they must have seen before they'd become like this. I've never seen any of them. I've never met them. I don't want to, he said, almost disgusted. But I could sense the pain in his body and mind. Most of all, I could sense the existential fear in his voice. Come on. The eyes and the wheels are coming. They want to destroy me. They've been persecuting me since our first meeting. Only because I wanted. No, because I needed what they don't cherish. A heart. A goddamn heart, Somber told me. We walked further, and in front of us, a huge metallic structure took shape. The dark machine, it's what he called it. The discarded angels lucky enough not to be turned to stone were thrown directly into the dark machine through that tube that crossed the sky. They were destroyed in the blink of an eye. It seemed to breathe, almost like a living thing, when it fed with those unfortunate enough to be sent there. A cloud of black smoke was coming out of a rusty chimney and went up into the sky. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. The faces of my daughter and wife came to mind. I prayed that they were all right. I prayed to whom? To those that did this abomination of a world? To those who treated their own like this? To those faceless and ruthless gods? The creators sent them to a place of eternal suffering just because they weren't perfect. If they weren't perfect, they needed to suffer and die. To the dark machine, the angel destroyer. Always hungry, always wanting death and destruction. All this new knowledge, not only did it change me forever, but it sent arrows of fear to my mind and soul. What were they really doing there in what was called the good heaven? But what about hell? Does it exist? I asked. Does hell exist, young man? Of course it does. It's buried deep down under the earth. It's changing every day. Pray to whatever it is you're praying that you'll never go there, Somber replied gravely. As we were approaching the dark machine, I saw a bluish fire in front of it. I'll show you later what this is for, Somber said. A trumpet sound broke the silence of the desolate, frozen, and depressed world of discarded angels. I looked in the sky and saw a ball of red fire. It tore through the gray skies and hastily approached us. The eyes and the wheels are here. Please, hide behind the dark machine. Somber screamed. I'll end this once and for all. His voice was filled with the sound of a million chainsaws. I couldn't stop being afraid of him or his voice as much as I wanted to. His words came out like a swarm of locusts. The ball of fire landed right in front of Somber. The halo of orange light suddenly disappeared, and the horror unfolded in all its twisted perfection. A large eye was attached to 3 large wheels. Its muscles and tendons were glued to it. The eye was bloodshot, enraged, ravenous, and insane. The wheels were spinning at high speed, and each of them had more eyes, smaller ones. They kept on looking here and there, scanning the area to and fro for enemies or immediate threats. The wheels were dripping a dark, disgusting liquid. It burned through the ground like acid. The eye opened its mouth. Metallic sharp teeth became the only thing that shined in that place. It instantly spat out a ray of fire that tore a hole in Somber's chest. He screamed in pain. Black blood dripped on the ground. Then, for the first time since I saw him, he began morphing. He was changing into something more powerful. Long, sharp metallic nails began surfacing from his body, steam coming out of them. They caused profound bleeding, but Somber held his ground. A crown of barbed wire appeared on his head. I was afraid he might lose the battle. He seemed to be at a big disadvantage. If he got killed, then what was I to do? Would I remain a prisoner forever in that depressing existential cage built for malfunctioning angels? I thought that if this is the way some angels are punished, then what would hell look like for mere mortals like us? I shivered in despair and horror. The nails launched from Somber's body and stung each and every little eye, thus stopping the wheels from moving. The eye screamed and began gushing out venom in all directions. Then it fell to the ground. It was now looking at the sky, coughing and choking on its own poison. Look at that, you bastard. This is where your gods send us to die. Why are we to blame for their mistakes? Why? Somber screamed in agony, pointing at the dark machine. The eye tried to look, but couldn't. Its voice probably shook even the good half of heaven. The anguish, disgust, and fear in his words were sent to my brain instantly. The idiot, I just looked at the Somber. He wasn't understanding any of it. Not the hate, the facts, or the pain. It wasn't even scary. The eye and wheels just followed orders blindly. Somber took his crown of nails and pierced the eye with it, and again, until all that was left was a puddle of mucus, flesh, and atrophied muscles. The eye had its mouth open when it froze. It wasn't perfect anymore, just another statue added to the collection of failures. Somber coughed again. The buzzing in it lowered its volume. I asked him if I could help. I was visibly struck with horror, its sharp pins and needles piercing my mind. "Take me to the blue flame, young man," he sighed. I helped him get there. We stopped in front of it. Blood was dripping from Somber's body, leaving a trace behind us. "Look how beautiful it burns. The only thing beautiful in this desolate, God-forsaken place. I think this is it for me," he said, coughing black blood all over me. He apologized when he didn't need to. He put his hand through the chest. The vengeful angel that did that was no more, at least. I hoped that maybe I could have had one of those hearts again. Maybe that would have made me more close to your kind. Although I knew it was impossible to be like you humans. You see, I've always loved your race. You are kind and you help each other. You love each other. Unlike my creators," he said, his voice breaking. "Throw me into the fire." I looked in shock and disbelief. I shook my head at first, refusing. Then I realized this is what he wanted. I just put him over the fire. As he was burning, he looked at me. He smiled, flames engulfing him. He seemed to feel no pain anymore. He was free, unattached. He was happy to be born again. The fire burned my hand too, small blisters forming on my fingers. I didn't care about the pain though. I only cared about giving Somber what he wanted. Another chance. "I hope I'll remember you in the next life, young man. Maybe then my creators will love me too." These were his final words to me, right before exploding into a million white little lights. The explosion sucked me in. I traveled through an unknown place. I felt like floating again, yet I couldn't open my eyes. I landed on the floor of my bedroom. Upon impact, all air left my lungs and the fear and shock were still there, as were the blisters on my fingers. I stood speechless until morning came. I tried to think about my wife and daughter, the way they smiled, the way in which they said loving words that filled me with joy and happiness. Sometimes, though, memories of that place invade my mind. They take over and flood it with pictures of that dark machine and the frozen statues, with pictures of the black sun and the gloomy sky.